Hey guys, it is Mr. Dave with the RayKitty Creation Workshop, and you are watching the RayKitty Science Project. Now this one here is kind of a part 2 of the last episode. So if you caught last episode, then you will know what's going on. But I'm going to do a little bit of recap, you know, that like last week on. Yeah, so we're going to do a little bit of that. Unfortunately, I don't have that like skip recap button that you'll see down in the corner. I don't have that. So you got to listen to the recap one way or the other. But this is part 2. If you want to go back and watch that other episode, they will have that posted online. But we are going to be talking about bacteria. Okay. Now, last week we collected a lot of bacteria on our little agar tray here, and we're gonna be looking at, here's some of the places we kind of collected it from. We collected it from the sink, and we collected it from that sink handle. That is kind of an idea of what you are thinking about, high touch areas. Now, when we collected it from my head, from my mouth, from my hands, from the sink handle, from the sink, from the door handle, the toilet, yes, the toilet, and from my shoe and a cell phone. Okay, so we collected it from all of these different places. Now, if you're curious about the agar tray, this is something you can purchase. They don't really have anywhere in town that regularly has them, but you can purchase them online. And what it is it's a little petri dish that has this agar medium in it. Okay, now this agar medium is very ready and ripe and just wants to grow that bacteria on it. Okay, so it is a wonderful medium. Now it looks like something that might spill. You don't have to worry about it spilling. It's kind of a gel that's in there. So we're going to be collecting our samples on our agar tray. Okay, now our agar tray will have, if you're doing this at home, you'll have 2 little dots, and those little dots are very important. If you can see, there is a little bitty dot here, okay, on the bottom, and a little bitty dot on the top. Now it's very important that you line those 2 dots up and you keep them lined up. Okay. The reason being, we're going to be doing multiple samples on our tray. Okay. And so if you want to do multiple samples, you have to remember what's in those samples. So we're actually going to mark the top and the bottom, and we're going to draw a little pizza on it, and I'll show you the lid from the one we did last time. We have this little like pizza design with our numbers on there, and this is a way of remembering what each sample was. Okay, so we wrote 1 through 8 on our little lid here. We also flipped it over and wrote it on the bottom. Now that's pretty important because you want to be able to kind of see where you're going to be putting each of those samples. Okay, so you write that 1 through 8 on there. You have your little applicator. Okay, you can use just a regular old Q-tip. Okay, you want to make sure that Q-tip stays sterile so you're not touching the part that's going to be collecting your sample. You will need some water, okay, when you're collecting that sample. So this water here is just from a regular water bottle of drinking water. Okay, it doesn't have to be distilled. It doesn't have to be any of those things. Just regular drinking water. When they put water into the water bottles, they will have that in a sterile environment or sterilize that. That way, it doesn't get all funky and grow a bunch of yuck in there. Okay, so what you're going to do to collect your samples is most of your samples, if you're collecting from something that is dry, you are going to get that little Q-tip wet and just kind of squeeze it out a little bit on the side there. Okay. That way it's not dripping, it's just damp, okay? And I'm going to use the term dry sample for these ones. Now the terminology that I'm using on the show today is not necessarily lab terminology. This is classroom terminology, okay? And classroom techniques. This isn't 100% perfect. This isn't 100% sterile, but for a classroom or for doing it at home, this is something that is easy to do at home. It's almost fail-proof, okay? So we're going to have that water on there. I'm not touching this. We want it to stay sterile until we take our sample, okay? I'm going to use just my cell phone as an example to show you how we took that sample. And as I said, you can watch the last week, but when you put it on there, you're going to twist, okay? And twist, and you want to just squeeze off as much of that bacteria onto your Q-tip as you can. Now, we're paying attention to high touch areas. I'm going to use the term high touch quite a bit. High touch is going to be anywhere that comes in contact with a human very often. Okay, so when we're collecting these samples, the samples that I told you that I've got collected and that we'll be looking at today are colonies. You don't have to do those. Okay, there's a lot of different things that you can take these samples from, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So once you've taken that sample, what you'll do is just in one of your sections, one of your little slices of pizza, you are going to take that sample and you are going to do the same little twist technique, and you are going to apply it to that agar. Now, I'm doing it to the lid because I already have my samples in there, but you're going to go right onto the agar. Give it a little bit of force, but not too hard. You don't want to tear it, okay? So if you have any questions on that, that's a real brief overview, but I want you to know kind of what you're looking at if you're watching this episode first. So the samples we've collected, I wrote in my lab notes. Okay, and my lab notes, as you can see, is just a piece of paper I tore out of my notebook. Okay, but this way I know what is on each sample. Okay, now you can be more specific if you want. Maybe you want to just, if you buy a little pack of trays, sometimes it's fun to say, if I'm looking at a chair, am I going to see more bacteria where the feet of the chair touch the ground? Am I going to see more bacteria where my backside goes or where my hands go? So you can check different places and different things. A light switch is an awesome place because you always touch a light switch. A television remote or your mouse for your computer, you don't want to think about it. The keyboard on the computer, there's a lot of different things you can do than what we've done here. Experiment with it, have fun. It is very inexpensive. They are called agar trays, or you'll have them called a Petri dish, and then it'll have agar in there, okay? You can also make your own, but it's cheaper and easier just to buy it. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to look at some of the colonies that I incubated, which is the next step, from last week when we collected them here in the studio. So in order to incubate your samples, okay, in order to kind of grow that bacteria, now remember last week, this just looked like this, okay? It looked the same as this. It was some lines on it, but it didn't have any of this, this stuff that's going on here, okay? You can see this nasty, there you go, maybe the contrast of my shirt worked a little better there. You can see all of this. Now, I did not put any of this grossness on here. Well, I put the very few bacteria, but I didn't put anything. You can see that all of these things, this was not added by me. All I did was collect those samples and put it on here and incubated it. Okay, now for the next step, for the incubation, I'll tell you how you're going to do that at home. It is very tricky. You have to have a very expensive incubator, something like a cardboard box. Yep, a cardboard box in a warm, dry-ish environment. Yeah, you want it to be about 80 degrees, which if you are here in New Mexico, I just put this in my garage, okay? So it was setting in my garage. When you are incubating it, you do want to make sure it is upside down. So you want the agar on the top when you're incubating it, okay? So it'll be upside down. You put it in there. We're really within a day or two, you'll begin to start seeing all of this show up, okay? Now this has been just a few days, you know, because we went there. So this one has been a few days as it was incubating, and we can see we have all kinds of different shapes and sizes of our colonies, okay? A colony of bacteria is just like when you think, oh, the original 13 colonies, right? It's the same idea. It's a matter of a collection of things that are similar in a similar place, acting a similar way. Okay, and that is a colony. So our colonies here develop differently based on the type of bacteria. We are not going to say, I know what kind of bacteria that is, okay? Because for all of this intents and purposes, we don't have everything it would take to test and know exactly what it is. We can get some really good ideas on it based on the way they colonize, okay? So we have all of these nasty colonies here, and we're going to talk just a little bit about one of the ways that we'll identify them. Okay, and if we look here at, say, this one over here, we see this white one that has got this white with the kind of wrinkles and things like that on there, kind of looking like something from Stranger Things. This one is an irregular pattern. Okay, the outside shape is one of the ways that we decide what it is. So that is a very irregular pattern. If you look versus maybe this little guy right here, that looks like a little, like I spilled a drop of egg on it, right? A very circular pattern. So our pattern or our colony shape is one way that we decide what that colony is, okay? As I said, we're not going to get into telling you exactly what it is. We're just going to look at the colonies and the colony shape. So shape is a very important one. Another one is color, okay? If we look on here, we have some nice, beautiful, disgusting colors. We have our white, 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 and then we have kind of that yellow. There's a lot of that yellow on there. We also have this kind of brownish hue on there, so we have different colors. So the shape is one way, the color, the opacity, okay? Whether it's really clear or whether it is really like, you really can't see through it. So how transparent it is, okay? So all of these are factors in determining what kind of colony that is. Now, if you want, you can look up and say, well, this is probably this type of bacteria based on the colony. It's just we don't have time to get into all of that here today. But if you do kind of go to that extra mile and figure out what maybe family or type of colony these are, you can really get into some higher level science. So to my brother-in-law, Mikey, my brother, who is like a microbiologist, he could look at these and he could probably tell you what they are. But we're going to look at them under a microscope. Okay, so we're going to check these out first under this microscope over here. Now I have my lid that I will use for my reference as to what is what. So I want to do the same thing. I want to align those dots, make sure my dots are aligned. There you go, pink. Okay, so now I can look at the lid and I can know what is in each section. Okay, so we're going to start with this one here. This first section of bacteria is the bacteria that, I'm not proud, this is the bacteria that came from my head. Yes, this was on my head and behind my ears. Gross, okay? So this bacteria was the bacteria that I collected from my hairline and from behind my ears. So this bacteria that we're looking at, if we look and we're trying to decide or look at the different things that we talked about, these are really pretty circular, but it looks like there's a whole bunch of those little circular lumps. As they divide, as they multiply on there, we're going to see more of those little circular lumps. If we continue to incubate this sample, we would see a lot of them. Okay? But we notice that our shape is circular. Now we also see that there are two things on there as far as color. Okay? We have some very yellow, and we have some very white. Okay? So those are going to be different types of bacteria based on the color. So this whole one here, all of these little dots came from my head, okay? Now we can see they're all really, if you look through that whole dish there in that section of our pizza, this section here from my head, those are all really pretty similar bacteria, right? So we've got mainly one type. Now the next one is from my mouth, okay? So we're going to look at the mouth one over here. And for the mouth, we can see something a little different there. Yeah, this is obviously not the same type of bacteria. This one here, we would see something that would be another indicator, and that is elevation. Okay, so we can see the elevation on this one, meaning the heights or the thicknesses. We see some very thick spots and we see some very thin spots. So this shows us our elevations on this bacteria. So this one here has an irregular shape, okay, because it's got all different kind of lines around the edges, and it definitely has an irregular elevation, okay? So this one we're actually going to bring right over here to this other microscope because I want to look at this same one a little bit closer. And now this microscope is just a little bit more powerful. And so we can see kind of some of those elevation differences just a little bit closer. And when we do, we see this is extra nasty, okay? Now, we're not getting all the way down to the cellular level on this one. We're still mainly looking at the shapes there, but we can see all those different thicknesses and see just how nasty that is. And actually, like, not being like that, but it's actually kind of pretty in a really gross way. But we can see all those different little irregular shapes that are in that one same little thing of bacteria that we were looking at. Now, that is only one of the types. If you're looking on this one here, your mouth, or my mouth anyway, didn't have mainly one or two types of bacteria. There was a bunch, okay? Now, that could be from foods, that can be from your body. There's all different types of bacteria on there. So we're going to look at another one that's on there. And next, we're going to look at this kind of, this little bit browner one here that is beside that large splotch. Now, looking at it, if we're looking at elevation, it doesn't look like it has as many variances kind of to the naked eye. It looks like it's a lot more opaque, right? So it's a lot clearer. And we have a little bit of color change there. So this one is not as white. It is also irregular, right? So if you're taking your lab notes on the different things that you're seeing in those bacteria, those would be some things that you would notice. Now, when we're looking at this one, let me pull it up. It is right over here. Ew. So we see some of that irregularity, but we can see that it is not really pronounced like it is on the other one. We have our height differences are a little bit different, but it's kind of like if you were looking at the sandy part of the beach versus looking at the mountains, right? So we have a little bit of a difference there. And then it comes down to this part here. Now this part has got that kind of darker color on it. I'm going to remove this light so we can kind of see through it a little bit. Now, this part here has got some definite transparency to it that we can kind of see through that kind of a yucky jellyfish looking stuff there. So if you're looking at your lab notes, in your mouth, we have this white one, right? That is white, highly irregular. We're going to pull this one over to this microscope too and look at that same one we were just looking at. And this guy here, we saw those irregularities as far as the height, but when we look at it here, yeah, see that one? We've got that bacteria there, and you've got the parts where it starts to stack and it gets a little bit deeper, but it really just has a slightly irregular elevation. So the elevation is when we're talking about how it raises up from our material, okay? So we want to look at the elevation, right? We saw the one with the big mountainous veins going through it, and then we saw the one with the little like pebbly beach. Those are different elevations, okay? That's how it looks from the side, as the elevation. Like when you look at the mountains, you see the elevation of the mountains, the side view, okay? So our elevation on this one, and this is still in my mouth. So this is another one from in my mouth. When we move it over here, we're going to just kind of look at those same little round ones. We can see I have the same round ones we saw everywhere else in my mouth also. But we're going to take a little look at those ones so we don't kind of just overdo looking at the same kind. And that one is this little guy here. Now, when I'm looking here, it looks pretty smooth, okay? You have a nice smooth, that's actually a cellular split right there that we're looking at. But we can see that this one, instead of having those bumps and the ridges and the mountains and the sand, we have a nice smooth area, okay? So we'll look at those smooth round ones over here, okay? Now we're going to move on from our mouth and we're going to go to our hands, okay? So our hands, as you can see, is this one here. And that has got like a lot of different ones than our mouth, but a lot of them are pretty similar, right? And that is a gross thought, okay? So we're going to look at these ones here. Oh, you know what? I was off by one. I was off by 1. So our mouth is actually this guy right here. Okay, this one with the very smaller, our larger ones here. This one we're going to look at hands next. Okay, so this will be our hands, and there you go. This came from my hands. Gross, okay? So all of that material there that has been propagated, that has grown, are bacteria that you're going to find on your hands. So in this one sample, we can cover a lot of different ways on how you are going to identify bacteria colonies. If we look over here, we see a colony that has got an irregular shape, okay? So this one has a very irregular shape, right? And it is a very white color, and it is very transparent. We can see this one here, this little yellow guy, also has a regular shape, but it's not as transparent, okay? And we can see that it's got kind of a bumped up elevation. Then we have this crazy looking thing right here, okay? Now the outside is a regular shape, but we also see like a split going on here where we see those lines in that. So this one, this bacteria here, is an interesting one because you could say, well, it's round, but it has an irregular elevation, and it is slightly transparent. So these are all different ways in these bacteria that we had collected that will show you kind of what type they are. Again, we're being pretty vague with knowing what type they are. You can kind of Google it, use your Google Lens and things like that, but it's not going to give you an exact, usually, because you have a lot of different little branches that those could be under. Now, as I mentioned, I was off by 1. Our clearest one right here is actually our mouth. Okay, this one that we really don't see too much here, this one was our hands. Okay, so I was off by 1 because I didn't follow my little dot. So when we're looking at this, we can see that, okay, yeah, we've got this one here. This is our mouth. The one that I want to kind of point out, okay, the one that I want to notice, if you're looking here, which one do you kind of see has the majority of variances and the majority of similarities, okay? So the ones with a lot of similarities, okay? When you're looking, you would say, well, this one's got a whole bunch. That must be the toilet, right? Or this one has a whole bunch. That must be the toilet. Now, our toilet is actually this guy right here. Yeah, our toilet. We've got primarily about one type of bacteria. As I said, they you know, the bathrooms here at the studio, they do a great job. They're very nice, very clean. But we see that these bacteria here are very similar to these ones here, but this one even has more. Do you know what this one would be? The sink handle. Yeah, so really when we look at the toilet itself versus the sink handle, we actually have more bacteria that we have collected from the sink handle than from the toilet. Now, be careful with this, okay? You're like right away you would say, oh, well, that means there's a lot more bacteria there. Not necessarily. When you're collecting it, maybe we collected a little bit more, maybe we got, a little bit more laid down, that kind of thing. But what we're really looking at are the types of bacteria. Just because we see a lot more on our sink than we do on the toilet, that doesn't necessarily mean there are more present. That just means we happen to capture more, okay? So our toilet here is kind of nasty, but then when you get over to this guy right here, okay, this one here is my shoe. Okay, this is the bottom of my shoe. Now, if you look on that one, you can kind of follow all the way around. My shoe has just about every type of bacteria that is on this dish, right? Just about all of them. We have this beautiful garden. It's even crawling up the side a little bit there. So the bottom of my shoe has bacteria that is everywhere in here. Think about it. Your shoe goes everywhere and it's on the ground. Okay, so when you're collecting this bacteria, you might be like, ugh, I never want to touch anything again. Okay, the toilet is disgusting, the sink handle is disgusting, my shoe is disgusting, my cell phone is disgusting. You're not wrong. Yep, it's all disgusting. You should never touch anything. No, I'm kidding. Bacteria, just because bacteria is present, doesn't mean it's harmful bacteria. and it doesn't mean it's bacteria that your body can't resist. Okay? If we look into our body, our gut has got more bacteria than just about anything else in our entire body. There is so many little bacteria in there, and we need those bacteria. Okay? If you look at the ground, right? If you want to take a sample from the ground, you're going to get all kinds of bacteria. A lot of that bacteria is bacteria that is helping to provide nutrients, right? Bacteria is how a lot of things get broke down and give the nutrients to the soil and in the water and things like that. So just because we see this bacteria doesn't mean like, yep, I am never going to touch anybody again. I'm going to wear gloves for the rest of my life. I'm just going to elbow, yeah, you don't have to worry about all that. A lot of the bacteria that we see, either our body can handle easily or it's beneficial bacteria, okay? Now, that does not mean I'm going to go lick the toilet because there's great bacteria. No, okay? Don't say, yeah, the bald guy on the science show said I should lick the toilet. I did not say that. But the bacteria that we see will grow in these conditions. They will grow in all kinds of conditions, but that doesn't mean that they are necessarily something harmful, okay? We need that bacteria. So this is a fun one to do. As I said, these trays, they're not readily available, but they're easy to find online. You can get some of these trays and you can collect these samples, collect them from all kinds of different things. As far as your identification, you can email me if you'd like, or there's lots of places online that you can find. Just be careful with saying this is this type of bacteria, but you can say what kind of colony it is. Okay, so this is a fun thing to learn about bacteria. If you didn't watch the last episode, watch that last episode and you can see us collecting all these samples. As I said, I am Mr. Dave. Thank you again for watching. And as I end everything, remember that science shows you matter.